All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining for our Witness and Archivista community call. We've got a link to the agenda shared in the chat, so hopefully folks can go ahead and take a look at that. And we'll just go ahead and get started at the top. I don't see any new folks here, so I think probably can skip introductions. And looks like the first thing on the top of the agenda is dir hash functionality.
Sorry for adding so many topics to the agenda.
No, it's awesome to have topics on here. So
Yeah, so what I did today before the meeting, I thought let's create a separate issue to cover the dir hash. There's now an issue that references two PRs, one for the library changes and one for the CLI change. So the dir hash functionality is based on the conversation we had in our last community call. And it implements the specification of the digest set based on a dir hash that is also used by Golang itself for their modules. So it was quite easy to implement it because they already had the logic in the core libraries, which is good. And that's it. But now it's a separate issue, so it's easy to split it off from the conversation we had about including and excluding products and materials. But there is specifically one, there are two topics open. The glob pattern library that is used is quite old, which Tom mentioned. And maybe we can include it or some other way because it's unmaintained. And the other topic is what kind of things should we address regarding documentation for this topic. Personally, I don't think there needs to be a lot more documentation than having the arguments available in the output, which it already is. But if there are other opinions, let me know, then we can expand, or I can expand that.
I think like it's definitely aiming to be above and beyond than core one in terms of documentation, but like looking through one of the tutorials maybe and adding like a quick like did you know call out or something, just so that like people using the function, like using the tooling and getting used to it, given like a route of knowing that feature's there. But yeah, like again, that's more like an above and a beyond. In terms of the glob library, like it was far more of a let's just ask to be sure than having a real issue with it. Yeah, but it seems to have been there for a long time, and it doesn't look like whoever who wrote it and was maintaining it is maintaining it any longer. I think it'd be good then maybe if we just vend that functionality into the repository rather than having that module to depend on. But like, I'm not like, it's a thought rather than a requirement.
Yeah, when I was looking at that repository, I agree. It has been inactive for 6 years, and there's no real official release. So
yeah,
it doesn't feel that good. But if it comes to copying the things that are in there, then we might have license issues because it has a different license. I don't know exactly how that works. I don't have experience with that, so.
I mean, yeah, John mentioned that it is used by 26,000 other, 26,000 other repos. But I'm just trying to be careful rather than sorry.
Yeah. Especially with the purpose of the tooling.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing. There's no security policy for the project. If some issue has been discovered, but maybe already, and there's no method for disclosing it other than, I mean, I suppose you could file a CVE, or it could end up in the GitHub security advisory, which I suppose should work fairly well. Would get picked up by Dependabot. And other things like that. So hopefully we would get notified, but it wouldn't get fixed unless we forked it, vendored it, did something else like that. So yeah, the licensing thing, I think we could vendor it with the existing license. It's an MIT license, so it's pretty pretty open as far as modifications or changes we would want to make. It's quite a bit easier for us as well too, because it's open source. It'll continue and remain open source. Any changes we make to the code will be open source. So that's usually the thing that gets caught up in GPL license things or things like that, as long as it's not like GPL v3, which is a whole different conversation.
Okay. Yeah, I'm open for anything. Maybe the easiest thing right now, as it was already used, it's not a new library, that we create a separate ticket, a separate issue for it, and then we can follow up if we can come up with a policy or something like that.
I think it comes on to the fact as well. We don't currently have a we don't currently have a policy like in our project as to what the definition of a good library or like a good enough library is. I'm just cautious of it because we are a supply chain security tool, and like, you know, one of the bread and butters in recent years of practicing good supply chain security is considering the dependencies you're pulling in. So maybe we do want to think about like something that so it seems we do. Yeah, cool. I'll take a look at that.
We use the GitHub dependency review workflow, which
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure what the actual back end of it's a GitHub specific project, and so they maintain. I think they maintain their own database of dependencies and potentially malicious ones or typo squatted or different things like that. This is part of the free for open source category of things, so it works well for us, but you can't use it in a private repo unless you have a GitHub advanced security or whatever the thing is, but not an issue for us here. So.
Cool.
Can we agree on creating a separate issue to follow up on it as a topic to come to a conclusion, or yeah? Okay. I'll pick that up.
Anything else on this topic? All right. Next one is running testers in parallel.
Yeah, that was another one by me. So one of the core things that I've been focusing on with all of these, the things that we had contact about, is speeding up the process of using Witness and making the attestation smaller, but still maintaining the functionality, and running the Git attester and the material attester at the beginning, but also running the attesters at the end takes a lot of time because of the size of our monorepo. So one of the things I thought is, hey, can we just run the attesters for each stage in parallel? So all the pre build or pre-run attesters and then post-run, and they run in parallel. I created a PR for it already without discussing, but I thought let's just give it a try. It works. I don't get any strange results or anything. So yeah, I don't know if there's any objection to doing it or any downside that I maybe overlooked there.
DJ, go ahead.
Oh, you should finish it though.
Well, I was just going to say the material, and I was just trying to look the code for this. The material tester has a specific point in the life cycle, I think, that runs right before the command run. And so I was just wondering of like if you did see any actual performance improvement, and could we run the Git tester and the material tester at the same time? Do we need that the life cycle? I mean, there shouldn't be anything in a pre-attester that creates new files. so running the material tester at the same time, I think makes sense, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, that was basically the same question I had. Maybe I'm missing something, but could it be a problem if you have like attesters that are dependent on each other, like with JWT, or well, I don't know if they are set in order or that they are created as a dependency.
It should be okay right now. I don't know if this is documented, but the intent is that you should never, no attester should depend on another attester within the same lifecycle. Only lifecycles that have occurred beforehand. So, for instance, we use that for product attesters to take a look, or post-product attester, whichever, to take a look and see if like a serif document was created and start recording that information. So, in the case of the JWT, as you mentioned, Matthias, I think those are just like embedded, like the GitLab and the GitHub attesters that use the JWT just pull them in as dependent, like embedded structs. So there's no dependency there that would break from things happening concurrently. So I think everything happening in the same life cycle asynchronously should be fine. I don't see any issues with that.
Okay, that sounds good. Then if that's the case, then I'll probably create an issue to document the reasoning behind it, and then with another review, we might be able to get it in. If I hear things correctly.
Out of interest, you said that like your pipelines are taking a long time.
Yeah.
Have you done any like testing of how long? How long have your pipelines been taking for the monorepo and for Witness? And have you done any testing of like how long it takes with parallelism? How much it speeds it up?
Yeah, I did some. But I didn't do it with the change that I created in the PR yet. There's another change that I've been working on last week, is creating all the file hashes in parallel. So I created an indexing and a worker mechanism, so it is able to index all the files, but at the same time in the background process all the hashes for all the files. Because if I look at the amount of files that we have at the end of our pipeline, I have like 1 million files or something like that. So and there are files in there that are not like an MB or a few MBs big. Some are like 100 or 200. So if you start to do hashing on so many files, then the process of just doing that takes like 5 or 6 minutes, and that happens at the beginning and at the end of the step, just one step. So that's a little bit too much. And when I implemented my parallelism for hashing, I went from 5 minutes to like 2 minutes and a bit. And I'm still optimizing the way that I'm doing that. So that's another thing I'm playing around with.
How long is the witness run taking for like a step or for a pipeline? Like how long is the pipeline ended up taking in terms of witness stuff?
The
If-
witness stuff is taking up like 8 minutes or something.
Okay, yeah, sure. So ideally, we want to try and slice that down.
For some
Yes.
further context, Matthias ran some profiling, and I have the profiling results from that, and
Oh, cool.
we can start digging into like which functions are actually really eating up the time. I think we saw a lot of performance from the Git attester was problematic.
Yeah, I find the Git attester takes ages. Like I found similar stuff. Even the Git, like most of the time when I run witness to test stuff, it's inside the witness repo. And now that there's all the npm stuff in there for the doc website, like it takes a million years. And then also the size of the attestation outward after. Well, I say a million years takes like seconds, which is when testing is really annoying. And then the size of the attestations afterwards is really unwieldy. So yeah, all of this stuff is really valuable.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem that I'm trying to fix.
Yeah. Awesome.
So running, starting with the attesters in parallel, that's possible. I see. I'll come up with a PR for the hashing stuff with some data around it.
The one thing that I was thinking about, and I haven't had a chance to put it as a comment on the PR, is the context is shared between all of the attesters. And so as we run that, we'll just probably need some new texts around accessing that, which shouldn't be super complicated. But
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Aditya, I know you had raised your hand before.
Oh.
Did you have any other thoughts?
No, actually, it's been great. Everyone's answering the questions I meant to ask, so it's brilliant. We should. I mean, I think it'll be good to document what Mikhail said more explicitly about testers never having a dependency on each other. There's the natural ordering for things like materials and products, but in future, we ought to be blocked if we're trying to introduce something that depends on something else inherently.
Oh, Tom, I think you have the next thing on the agenda. OpenVex and Archivista.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll try and be quick. I thought this was just something that might be worth, if we've got the time, to quickly show people what I've been working on and why, and yeah, and just to pitch forward the idea. So I was at State of OpenCon, which is a conference that is based in London every year, and someone from the OpenVex community gave a presentation on OpenVex and VexETL. I'll share my screen and make sure I give the appropriate context. So VexETL. So VexETL is, I don't want to fork it right now. Come on. OpenVex is part of the OpenSSF, and it is an implementation of the vulnerability exploitability exchange, VEX for short. It's designed to be minimal, compliant, interoperable, and embeddable. I hear there was a question. If this is a question, feel free to, or a chat pinged. Feel free to
can you increase the font size a little bit?
Yeah, sure thing. Is that better? Is that better?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to how we were before. So VexETL is a tool to try and a tool to make Vex work. So the ideal workflow, well, the workflow of someone wanting to leverage Vex is that, say, in a let's see if I go to my test repo, someone working on a repo such as this one might notice that there is a security a security vulnerability flagged up against their repo, like this one, for example. From here, if they feel the need to, they will likely go and triage this vulnerability to figure out whether or not it affects the repository, whether they need to fold out, update the dependency, or whatever that may be. So what vexETL does, if I go back to the correct tab, what vexETL does is it provides a CLI interface for people to be able to, once they've done their triaging, create a Vex statement and a few other things. So you can see in this example, we have a package called Wolfie Git with a certain version. And this command will create a Vex document specifying that a specific CVE doesn't affect this product for some justification or some reason. And then after that, it will create some JSON to outline this information. To give an example of this in the wild, let's go to Cilium. From what I've been told, Cilium uses vexETL in exactly this manner. And inside of their repository, they've got an open Vex document. A Vex document is it's a Vex document. It has some information at the top, some like header information at the top, and inside that it has Vex statements. So inside of the statements are for every vulnerability that's been flagged up against the project, or the project. It mentions the products that this Vex statement applies to, the vulnerability in question, and then the status, justification, that sort of stuff. So this got me thinking, because of course, like, this is all very good, but I don't know if you agree, but the sort of the flow of using vexETL as a dev feels a little bit clunky, a little bit like a bit of a pain, and also like once I've created the document as a dev, like, I don't really want to have to handle all of the process of bringing that together and modifying the document and that sort of thing. I just want to, like, basically as quick as I can, get in, get out, and say that I've investigated this and it's no longer a problem. And so what I started to think about was a flow that I'm going to demonstrate to you now quickly. So if I go back to my test, so I'm in my, I'll make the text bigger. I'm in my test repository, and I am going to, let's say I'm gonna make a change inside it. Yeah, let's make a change. So I've got my repository, and let's say I'm a developer doing some development on my project. I'm making a really important change to the source code, committing a really important message, pushing it up, and doing my day-to-day stuff. Let's say in the example of, let's go to mic tests of this project, I find one of these security vulnerabilities that's up against my project. Let's go to this one, for example. And I go and get this CVE, and I definitely triaged it. It's definitely not a problem. What do I do next? So for me, what I want to do in a roundabout way, I don't really care as a developer where it stashes that metadata that I'm going to create. All I want to do is get to the point where I can just say what happened, and then later on that can be somehow triangulated that I was the user that's commenting on the fact that happened. So I thought a little bit, and I thought maybe vexETL could have a commit command. So I want to specify the vulnerability in question. I want to say that it's not affected, and I'm going to say that the vulnerable code wasn't present, for example. If I go to the Git log, now there is a Vex statement, not a whole document, but a Vex statement that is inside of the commit message. The reason I thought this might be a good idea is, like, it's very low, like that sort of flow is very low touch for the developer, and it can easily be committed. I think I've read and heard of people complaining that you should absolutely never use git commit messages to store especially structured information. After a conversation I had with Cairo, I think the better way of doing this would be the vexctl command modifying that OpenVex document, and that's actually like not too dissimilar to what what am I trying to say? Not too dissimilar to what vexctl does already. But regardless, I'll show you that this was the brainchild of the work that I was doing. Now I've committed it and cannot push it because that's wrong. I can push that up. And now I've committed that. That's just in the Git tree, which if I go to might test, we'll see is right here. But what do I do next? Now what I want to do is I want to release my new software. And preferably for this new release, it should bundle in some way, shape, or form. I want this Vex statement to be bundled along with this new release so that users can get this information. So if I go ahead and I draft a new release and publish that release, actually no, because I need to set the tag, vo.o.35, we will go ahead and publish the release. This is where you'll see the next command, the next command that I've sort of worked through in vexctl, which is the vexctl release command. So if you're familiar with GoReleaser, as part of the release workflow, will get all the commits between the release that I just cut and the previous release and put all of those commits into the changelog. So that sort of like got me thinking that I could do much the same way, but look for commit messages in all the commits of the diff between the two tags or the two releases that are structured Vex statements. So the release workflow is going to go ahead and run. vexctl is going to build. Of course, it's building my custom vexctl rather than there's no GitHub action or anything. This is just all like very POC work. And then it's going to run vexctl. What I'm going to do for the brevity of time is I'm going to go back to a previous workflow that has already run for vo.34. If I go to the run vexctl, you'll see that I now have, and I just printing this out to for now in the workflow, a Vex document that I need to do some extra messing around to the tooling. Like the version isn't being printed out correctly and a bunch of other things, but you can see that like my Vex statement that I added in the commit log is there. So the point after this, and this is something that I was going to do I was going to modify the vexctl release subcommands to do this. But of course, I don't have access to my local Archivista current in my in GitHub Actions. So I sort of made a script locally to emulate this. I want to attest that information and push it to Archivista. So if I go to vex attest, you'll see that I am passing in that the JSON for that Vex document that you just saw. And what I've done with Archivista,
build up the text just a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. What you will see, what I've done with Archivista is I've added a schema in Ent so that I can make queries in toto attestations inside of Archivista that contain Vex documents and Vex statements. Which is of course like really helpful because if I want to find like Vex documents that correlate to a specific version or to a release or something like that, I can do just that, as well as the supplier and little bits and pieces like that. So if I go ahead and do Archivista CTL, and I think this will get the right one, you'll see in Archivista I've got an in toto statement, which inside of that, in the predicate, has my Vex document. That's all good and well. And now what I want to do is I want to try and get this in toto statement out by getting some of the subjects that are in the statement. So here, for example, I've got the author is me, Chaos in the CRD. And I'm quickly going to go to another directory because I've built this all sloppily and it's not in my path. But if I then go run and then I want to do a search, I believe. And I search for that hash that I just copied. It's the same one because I ran the command earlier. You'll see now that for that supplier get hash, I've now gotten back, okay, the Vex ID was empty. This is all very like last minute that I decided to demo this. But you'll see again that I've now got the getoid that I just retrieved. Let's see, the same getoid that I just retrieved. So that way we're starting to put, I'm trying to think about how we can piece together vastly improving the workflow so that we can use Archivista in order to get back Vex documents that correlate to artifacts, so that we can understand if a sift or a gripe or whatever is, or a gripe rather is, or a trivy is giving back CVEs against my artifacts. I can then follow up with a step to see if those CVEs actually do apply, given any Vex statements that might have been uploaded to Archivista. One other thing that I want to do past this and think about is think about how this like more could be done inside of the like the GitHub and GitLab experiences as well. But that's something that I've got nowhere near doing. So yeah, I just thought it'd be worth sharing that. It was quite a fun experiment for working with Archivista a little bit and seeing how much work it is to start querying based off things that aren't just witness collections. But yeah, it's worth also stating that we plan on adding the ability to query things in Toto statements that aren't just witness collections. So source of provenance, in Toto link metadata, that sort of stuff. But yeah, when we have the time. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead and ask away. Otherwise, if not, then I think the next person on the agenda is Cairo, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
No worries.
It's very cool. Yeah, and then we can discuss later again as we started. About me, I want to just give a quick updates that actually the policy in Archivista, witness policy in Archivista was merged. It means that you can upload and retrieve and search for attestation for policy in Archivista. Also was merged in witness the ability to verify policy without having the policy file locally. You can use and retrieve it from Archivista, and it doesn't break the current way to work with the files, to prioritize the files over the Archivista retrieve. And second thing is like I'm working to include in Archivista linked to the DC envelopes the metadata. This PR, it's in Archivista 269. It's the number. Yeah, the PR it's implementing the database in the end to be able to store the key and values for the metadata. There is some discussion going there if someone want to join. Is interesting because to implement it, the finally implement it, we need to have the parser, but we need to decide how to give this extra metadata, if within the DC envelope or in the headers or other options. We need to decide how to include this metadata. It's open. We hope we can decide and merge it soon. These are my updates for today. Let me check what's the next topic in the. Yeah, the CNCF calendar meeting item for witness and Archivista. Issue for action. Someone aware about it?
Yeah, I added it there because I had to search for this calendar and the meeting again. So I was like, I see that there are some in-toto meetings already planned in the calendar, but this one is not. So, and maybe it would be very convenient to have like a bookmark at the top of the witness channel or something like that where we can find it.
Yes, we should do that. And like I said, I wanted to add a reminder in the channels too of like we should be able to do a pretty easy Slack reminder of the third like Wednesday of the month. You remind people that it's coming up. And I picked Santiago again to add it, to put in the ticket to get it added to the official calendar. And I think he said he's actually done it this time. So hopefully soon it will be there. Once it's there, we probably will never be able to change it because for some reason managing those calendar invites is incredibly difficult for CNCF. There's too many meetings, I guess, or something. But
Oh, good. The next topic I also added, which is when will we have the next release for Witness? And how do we plan it? Maybe that's maybe that's the bigger question that ties in with the next topic, the milestones. But
yeah, John, you're probably the right person to.
yeah, so today we should have another release. That'll be the thing we'd like to do is cut a release. The planning is something that we should do more of. We were having some conversations about doing a better job with patch releases as well, of making sure, Dependabot usually runs Sunday night my time or Monday, and putting out a patch release just with those security updates and dependencies could be helpful for a lot of folks, I think. We should be able to automate that pretty easily. The planning for the upcoming milestones, I think we also need to do a better job of. The GitHub issues and other things are not well organized. And we can create a project board as well too that might be helpful. The milestone that I've been thinking about that's probably the most interesting is 1.0. And I think from that perspective, we'd like to be able to have everything from the more conformance with upstream in-toto specification, the in-toto attestation stuff. We're getting a lot closer there with like the link and the salsa attester, the ability to create those as one-off things. I think, I don't know if Aditya has thoughts about the ITE 10 and 11 stuff as far as from the policy side, how we get aligned there. They're still draft ITEs, and so until they actually get merged, it's hard to be in compliance with we could be aligned with the draft, but I don't think there's a way to be in compliance with that.
Yeah. Honestly, I've been pushing for it a little bit, but it might be helpful for more people to also demonstrate some interest there. So maybe it's time to have a couple of issues kicked off, so an issue kicked off for what. So we usually do this thing that's almost like an RFC issue that says, hey, what needs to happen to this ITE for it to be accepted? And we can do that for ITE 10 because it's been merged as a draft, and it's not really, I don't think it's very controversial. ITE 11 is likely more controversial. And ITE 11 is still an open PR, so I don't know, maybe some engagement there will bump it up in priority for folks as well. I can also help, synchronize some of that off this call, but yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And I think short term, one of the other things we know we need to do is have actual or better support for version schemas of the attesters. So as we want to add things like include, exclude configuration to different attesters, I think there's two parts of that. The one is just getting Go Witness to have the, and I don't think it's a complicated code path, but maybe just at least an example code path of how we can support multiple different versions, and also documenting compatibility of things like that. And then with the recent JSON schema stuff that Tom worked on, being able to kind of figure out the right way of versioning that. And that might be as simple as just creating folders. We shouldn't, after we generate one, we probably shouldn't have to regenerate it, hopefully, because without a version change, we shouldn't be changing the schema itself. So, Matthias?
Yeah, there could be different steps to actually start to organize it a bit. Maybe the milestones would just be like a focus for, let's say, we want to go from our current miner to the next miner, and you can expect these things in this milestone. But have indeed more of an RFC that says our goal for version 1 is to have all these things in it, and then we can start updating that ticket with the right issues that need to be resolved before we actually are able to get one out of the door. I think if you start to work with the projects, it becomes a little bit more complex. So the dynamic of figuring out how we do this as a community might involve a bit too much to already get a project going. But the milestones could have enough detail at this point, from my perspective, to give an idea of, okay, this is what I can expect for the next miner. And then we'll wait for the next. It could be that we say, let's have a miner at least every month or every 3 months, maybe. Then you can expect some new features to be available as we're working towards version 1. But that's just an idea.
Yeah, I like that, and I'm definitely in favor of lighter weight process over heavier weight at all every opportunity. So, and I think we probably can do some stuff with just having, like I said, milestones, tags, tagging issues for different things, and we can start creating some issues and tagging them for what we would think to be the next minor release, and kind of being able to prioritize that. And I know we have in our own heads, at least from a Testify Sec perspective, things we'd like to accomplish, and doing a better job of getting that out into the open would be helpful. And you've done a good job as well too of having things you'd like to get accomplished, and better coordinating with you on which release you'd like to actually get those into would be, I think, helpful for everybody.
I can still have my internal builds. That's not a problem. But I agree. Let's see how we can make that work. Maybe that's a follow-up question of, if we, as a community, we want to participate in doing better triage, for example, or pointing out specific steps that we could take on the next topic or on an issue. Like, I think you can label it this way, or I think this is part of a feature change, or this is a bug, or is there any idea of how we could do that?
From having the conversation and getting feedback kind of about the overall process, we could probably start a GitHub discussion. The other thing that I was just looking for, and GitHub's going to make it difficult, is I think you can create a role in GitHub that has permissions just for triaging, adding labels to issues and things like that. And that might be a useful thing if somebody's really interested in being able to do that sort of stuff, which kind of giving them the that ability to add labels, create things, and assign issues, and then just kind of until it becomes a problem or there's conflict, just kind of like, once again, a lightweight process of just let someone kind of lead that, and then if we have issues or there's conflicts or confusion around it, then just provide that feedback in real time and iterate on the process. Also, I think the action item for me will be to double check on the permissions and see what we can do there. And then the other thing would be to I'll start a GitHub discussion as well too, kind of about what process would work, and we can go from there.
Sounds like a plan.
So, are there any other items that we wish to discuss? Or have we reached the end for today? Got 9 minutes left.
Yeah, we have Frederick. Hey, Frederick, do you want to share something with us?
Hello. So there's probably not enough time to go over it right now, but I did create some benchmarks on Archivista. The short version of it is we're able to do stores of around 30,000 attestations from my system here in the San Francisco Bay Area to US East 1 at a rate of, or not at a rate, but I was able to store 30,000 attestations in between 5 and 6 minutes. And that includes establishing new connections for each attestation, sending attestation, closing it down. So, which means like TCP, there's a 3-way handshake. When I checked with Carl, I didn't put this in the document. I need to go in and I measured it earlier. I need to put it in. But when I do curl, I can get it to write out the amount of time until like first byte of actual data. And it was my average run before the first byte to data was between 0.15 to 0.2 of a second. So those tests would include a similar would include a similar latency to them, considering that they're kind of coming from the same system and reestablishing that connection. But yeah, just wanted to give that information. I had to bump the concurrency up to 100 in order to get the results. Having low concurrency made it really slow. Again, TCP connections. So we can go over the document in more detail at a later time, though. So just wanted to toss that in.
Connections is just because it's rolling off the top of my head. I guess we don't have the ability with Archivista to push multiple attestations at once currently, do we? And is there any use case where we would want to? I understand that there might be like problems associated with doing so.
So there's 2 areas. One of them is you could it is possible to set gRPC up to receive an array of attestations instead of just a single attestation. That would be an easy fix, although it would be a breaking API change, so you'd have to update older clients when you do that. You could create a second endpoint that is a bulk upload that would not break the current API. But it also, part of it is when we're looking at the number of attestations that are created, the question is whether that's enough or not. And based on previous conversations, it sounds like with the current size of organizations that should probably be enough. The third one is you could send over the same, if you persist the connection, because this one was running Archivista control, doing the store command and sending in that particular command. if there are multiple attestations to send, we could persist a connection because a large part of the latency is literally in a three-way handshake. Like you have the SYN ACK, and then the ACK before you can send any data to it. So if we have multiple attestations, we could, and we were to pass multiple attestations into the store, we could use that same connection and basically upload however many that we want as well. So that should significantly increase the performance for systems that have poor latency and are trying to upload a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and I
John
think
Center.
you raised an interesting question, kind of from the perspective of a use case. The mental model I have would be a large number of CI/CD pipelines. Could be 15,000, 30,000, whatever the number is. And each of the steps in those pipelines are generating likely a single attestation. You could have multiple steps running in parallel, but still, like, probably not more than a handful of attestations simultaneously per pipeline. And each of them would be creating their own connection. And so that might be a slightly different kind of workflow or problem as far as the maximum number of simultaneous connections that could be supported. And the integrations, just like thinking out loud as well too, the integrations with the runners themselves for those different CI/CD pipelines might be a good place to think about how to create and leverage that persistent connection, whether it's like a GitLab runner or GitHub runner. If that is the thing that's observing and signing attestations, we could probably gain a lot of efficiencies there as well too.
Yeah, I can say for certain as well that the area where we're actually hitting a benchmark, or not a benchmark, a bottleneck right now, once I upped the concurrency, was no longer the I/O from the network, but it was the CPU within the database. So CPU, I was using the T3 medium. And during the upload, I was able to hit 100% CPU usage, and so the next thing would be to bump that up and see how that impacts. Like, what if we moved it to like I think it was like an M5 large. I think is what I call that in the document. I can double check, but like, what if we bump it up, and then does that change the current setup? And what happens if we were to increase the total number of threads from 100 to let's say 1,000 or similar? So like this particular one was just to get some rough numbers, just so we can get a rough sense as to where we're at. There's the other question as well is going to be how many attestations are we expecting at any given moment? Like this one, we're pushing roughly 80 attestations per second, and a little bit more than 80 per second. So that means with the current setup, actually, I think it was like 88 or 89. So with the current setup, if we were to push more than 80 per second and we start to see rates start to approach that, then that means that we need to start increasing the provisioning of that particular system. And of course, that's only if it's representative. Like if we're doing much larger attestations or much smaller attestations, then of course that can change. So I think that over time we need to gather more data. I would love to eventually get some form of an aggregator, if with an opt-in where customers can basically send us like, here's the average size of the attestation, average linkage that within it. So basically some very basic statistics that we can then use to further make decisions based on real data. But I think the real question right now is going to be, is this sufficient for all of our customers' use cases? And if the answer is yes, like then we don't have to make any changes at this particular point. We can delay those changes until a later time.
Yeah, one thing we may want to look at, and I gotta go right after this, so I apologize I can't see on. But the number of subjects, really, if you have an attestation collection with 10,000 subjects, it's gonna blow some stuff up. So we may want to add a configuration variable into Archivista to limit that and to reject those attestations, just to protect our instance and the customer's instances from that malicious or just a bad attestation.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well. Like this one, the number of elements that we look at are pretty low. So we could say, well, what happens if we increase that linkage by 10, 100, 1,000, and see what happens.
Matthias? Oh, sorry. Oh, you're on mute still. By the way, is it Matthias?
Yeah.
Is it Matthias or Matthias or
It's Matthias.
Matthias? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Cole is just gone, but he mentioned about the amount of subjects that could be a problem, and if it's too big, it might be discarded. It was actually the problem that we had with our monorepo when it started to output data. We had an attestation file that was like 2 gigabytes big, but all the products were also all part of the subjects. So that was one of the things that I thought I'd throw it in because it's one of the use cases. It's still valuable data in some cases, but in other cases it might indeed you might need to discard it.
I wonder if we could do some handling of this client side as well. Like Witness would be probably a good candidate of, like, if you've enabled Archivista and you've got a crazy amount of subjects, either outputting a warning or just stopping and going like, no, like this is too many subjects, and maybe you need to add a -- force if you're really sure if you want to push it with an unsensible amount of subjects. Yeah, one of the, again, we're running out of time, but one other thing I'm interested in is like the speed at which you can perform fetching Archivista, fetching attestation from Archivista. I think like yeah, providing users the ability to get really low latency queries of the database is another thing we should probably explore and try and optimize Archivista for, because I think that's something that's missing in the current state of attestations and yeah, metadata.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention in the database is at least if you're on AWS, you can spin up the number of readers in their managed service by, you could have 15 readers, and the database will only has one writer by default, and I think that's a hard limit. So there's a big difference between how we end up scaling out one versus the other. So the writes are a little bit more critical than the reads in that respect.
Good to know.
Yeah, but yeah, this is just the first. This is just the first round. We can gather more. I can gather more information, and the information about the high number of subjects is super useful. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I think in that case, that is just about everything for today, right? So yeah, thank you everyone, Matthias, for coming. And yeah, see you all in a few weeks. Cheers. Bye-bye.